Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Ames Board of Education. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I approve the agenda.
Second.
Approved by Deardorff, seconded by Briggs. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Passes 7-0. Director Colton, will you please read the mission statement?
The mission of the Ames Community School is to ensure that all learners develop the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and personal esteem necessary to grow in and shape a changing society.
Thank you very much. Our first item tonight is a public hearing on the conveyance of property from portions of the old Edwards. Did we receive any written comments to the staff? No written comments received. Anyone sign up or desiring to speak? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion, please.
I move we approve the resolution for conveyances of the portions of the old Edwards property at 3622 Woodland Street.
Second.
And before the vote, I want to take just...
Who are you? Deardorff moves, seconded by Rosser. That's who I heard.
And before the vote, I want to take just a second. It's kind of a complicated issue, and I understand what is up there in front of for the public is not quite as clear as what's right in front of the board members. But over the years, this has kind of been an interesting thing. If you go back to the 50s when Edwards was built, the very southern boundary, and it's I know on the screens that the directors are seeing, I'm kind of trying to take my little hand across there and identify where that southern boundary is for that Edwards property. Over the years, believe it or not, there used to be an alley that went through there, and the fence was put on the north side of the alley, but the alley really belonged to the district. So over a period of 70 years, the property that's on the other side of that fence at Edwards kind of was used by our neighbors to the south, let's put it that way. And the original line that was there was kind of zigzagged. It was not straight across. There would be portions where our property went a little bit deeper into some of those backyards and not quite as deep in some of the others. Jerry's worked very hard over about the past 6 months working with the 5 neighbors that are there. And what this conveyance here is, the neighbors are actually coming together for about $2,700 to help purchase the land that was once the alley so that it can actually become part of their permanent backyards. And the city and part of the demolition wants that fence taken out of there for now. So that's what this conveyance is all about.
Any questions for Dr. Taylor before our vote? All right, vote on roll call, please.
Perez, aye.
Rosser, aye.
Colton, aye.
Deardorff, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Binken, aye.
Briggs, aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you. Moving on, our statement on our discussion items. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. Item 4, certified enrollment.
Again, on the board in front and on the screens up above is what is known as our SRI, which is our certified enrollment for 2017, which at some point seems to be rather complicated, but the more you deal with this over time, the more simple that it really becomes. But it is a summary of what we call our certified enrollment, which is different than a head count or a nose count. Either way you want to take a look at that particular number. Certified enrollment means, quite frankly, that we do have a number of students that do not count as 1.0 or full-time students. And a good example would be homeschool students. We do get credit for them on our enrollment, but they only count as a 0.2 or 2/10 of a full-time student. The significance of that, we receive state aid funding based upon our enrollment. How much? And a round number, I'm going to throw out $6,500 over, even though that isn't absolutely accurate, but just for the ease of conversation. Every full-time student, we receive $6,500 to help educate that student during that particular year. So obviously, the more enrollment, the more money you receive. The interesting features, I think, with this particular certified enrollment, and most of it is extremely happy news. As you go across the top of this, the first item identifies resident public students attending your district, and then it gives you 3 columns. The first column is what the current enrollment is, the second column is the previous, and the third column is the change. What we've discovered from last year with our certified enrollment count is that we are up 104.5 resident students, which is very, very good news. The second one talks about the number of resident students that are open enrolled out. This year we have 197.5 students that are open enrolled out of Ames. Last year it was 184, so there are 13 more students that have open enrolled out. Lines 4 and 5, and there are 2 4 and 5 lines there, are more complicated. They really indicate the first 4 or 5 lines shows the number of dual enrolled students, and by dual enrolled, obviously, most of those are homeschool students, but they come to us for 1, 2, and even 3 classes. And of course, we get credit for 0.2 for each class that they take. Obviously, I think most of those involve science classes and AP courses. So as you take a look at that particular number, it's not very large. It's 8.96. It was 14 last year, so we're down about 5 students when it comes to dual enrolled students. The next 4 or 5 line does show the number of homeschool students enrolled through what we call post-secondary enrollment option classes, mostly at DMAC or Iowa State University. We only have a 0.9 student. There was a 0.55 last year, so it's a change of up 0.35. The next line, which is line 5, is residential facility students enrolled for our district classes. That's always been 0. Most of those are residential students that are at the Beloit residential facility, and because we've identified and have classrooms that we use at the Beloit facility, and since we hire staff to actually work in those classrooms with the residential students, it becomes part of our campus, so it has been 0 forever. Line 7 is the one that catches most of the attention because it's the actual enrollment. And what our actual enrollment indicates is that we're currently at 4,300.76, which is up 112.76 students from last year. Right below that, just for board edification, in lines 8 and 9, that really talks about students that are non-resident who are open enrolled into Ames. Keep in mind that we had 197.5 that open enrolled out from line 2-3. We have 488.5, or nearly 500 students who open enroll into Ames. This is an increase, as you can easily see, of 82 students over the number that we had last year. And I think part of that is you need to know that while other districts will count those students, the fact that they are coming to Ames as part of our certified enrollment means that the dollars that are assigned to those students will come with them into our general fund. The difference here is that we're open enrolling 291 more students than we're open enrolling out of the district, which was going to help our general fund significantly. I think just for some historical perspective on the open enrollment, and I've mentioned this to the board on several occasions and around the community also, in 2011, our certified enrollment showed 196 Ames students that open enrolled out and 226 that came in. So it was about a 50-50 deal. Over the past 6 years, what we've managed to do is increase that number to almost 500 coming in. So that's up 291 students from where we were 10 years ago. A lot of reasons, perhaps. I like to think it's because of our facilities, but I really like to think it's because of our programming and what we can offer Ames kids. I think it's a lot of the culture from Ames and our school district too that is very attractive to people outside of our district. What this I think really does also is helps us understand a little bit more about ourselves from the standpoint that our enrollment had been decreasing significantly, and the board has in their presence a larger chart that I wanted to share. And that larger chart, by the way, indicates an enrollment history since 1983. And it breaks it down by building, and it breaks it down by total enrollment since 1983 and what we look like. We hit a high, by the way, in our enrollment in the year of 1997, where we had 4,970 certified enrollment students. From that time, we had gradually declined until the last 2 years where we about broke even. So this jump of 112.76 students for this upcoming year has not happened since 1996 or 97. Pretty impressive. At least it's impressive from a fiscal point. It's impressive from the standpoint that kids, I think, want to come to Ames. There was one other sheet that I handed out to the board which indicates where those open enrolled, those 500 open enrolled kids are coming from. Barb Peterson didn't want me to hand this out because she's missing one student yet from this list, but it will give the board a pretty general idea of where our kids are coming from, including a total of 180 students from Gilbert, which is the highest, but we have them from as far away as West Des Moines, West Marshall, Roland Story, Marshalltown, Des Moines even. So we have students coming to us from a pretty good circle around central Iowa for the most part. I'm just really pleased with this enrollment, and once we figure out from the state legislature what may or may not happen to our state aid for next year, the fact that we are up, as you look down at the bottom, the bigger numbers, 182 students that will be coming into our district from what we have this year, should help us in the budget or the financial times that we're going to face here in the spring. Ready to try and answer any questions that I can with this. As we begin to break this down further, we'll indicate or get information to the board about where students in Ames are open enrolling out to, and we'll break it down in many other ways to give you some additional information, but I'm happy to try and answer questions now.
Yeah, that was my question, where our students are going. Is there a way for us to know? Do we have?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would be curious.
Actually, that's a very good question. Any student who open enrolls in has to complete a form so we can keep track of that. Same as for students who open enroll out. So just like Barb could produce this document about where the kids are coming from, she can also produce one for where the kids are going. She just didn't have time today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And today was the last day to certify, so this number could change by maybe 1 or 2 over the next day or 2, but I'm still confident it's going to be right around the lowest 110 and the highest 114. But it gives the board a general idea of where we're at with enrollment.
Thank you.
Dr. Taylor, are these counts? These are counts, right?
Correct.
So if they're counts, can you help me understand why they're not whole numbers?
Yeah, it comes down to the funding again. Every student that we get is full-time enrolled student counts as a 1.0.
So like on the first line, even still, right?
Even in the first line, those are not actually a head count number.
Okay.
The head count number is really closer to 4,600 students that come in. And I think what confuses people is we have about 200 open enrollment kids. They count a 0.2, so instead of counting as 200, or they would on a head count, they really only count as 40. Homeschool, I'm sorry. I used the wrong term. So, and we also have that same thing with dual enrolled students who may not, or they may be residents but aren't enrolled full-time. They may just be taking 1 or 2 classes. So the certified count is usually a lot smaller than the head count will be. Did I help answer that one?
So what we're really counting are the percentage or how much the state is giving us.
That's correct.
It's almost like an FTE almost.
Yes.
But that's okay.
FTE would be a good way to look at it.
So given that this will determine the state support that we get a year from now and seeing that we have some increases. Are we finding areas right now that we are tight based on some of this increased enrollment?
Yeah, a lot of it, and this kind of comes back to a conversation we had at the Facilities Committee. We're very tight with classroom space at both Meeker and at Mitchell. We do have 1 cent sales tax that we've kind of been holding back in reserve that could help actually add classrooms onto those particular buildings. And if you think about Meeker especially, it does have a K1 wing and a 2-3 wing on it. If we needed to add classrooms, those wings were stubbed in and ready, so that all we'd have to do is just add those classrooms onto the end of that. It could grow out to add additional classrooms. I have a feeling that as we begin to look at this, this is something that the Facilities Committee is going to have to take that conversation up. And Jerry has told me you can put new classrooms on in 6 months. And he's still shaking his head yes, so I'm feeling good about that.
Any other questions for Dr. Taylor's staff? None? All right, thank you for the report. Do we have any public comments on the certified enrollment report tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5, our committee work. Can we go ahead and talk about facilities first?
Sure.
Okay.
There were a number of items that we talked about during the Facilities Committee meeting last, I think it was last Tuesday, or was it Wednesday? I'm starting to lose track of days. Either way, Jerry had a couple things, there were a couple items that I wanted him to address the board relative to. One of them is a discussion we had with the Facilities Committee about the food pantry at Ames High School, what that's going to look like, and some modifications that we have to make in order to make that happen. So I've asked Jerry to come up and talk about that one for us.
Yeah, I met with Spence Evans and Candace Collins. With the homeless liaison up at the high school, and we were looking for a space to be able to have her program. And a couple of challenges that she was wanting to solve was being able to have some discretion. So we didn't want people running or walking entirely through the building. So we were looking to be able to find a spot where we'd have an exterior access. So we started out in one room at the high school, and we were looking at that as far as the old auto shop that hasn't been used for quite a while. And I kind of took a problem-solving approach with Spence, and we mentally walked around the entire building to look for all types of options where we might be able to accomplish that and be able to economically and reasonably be able to create a space that they'd be able to run this program from. And so after we kind of went full cycle, and then we realized and recognized that there's a classroom in the northwest corner of the high school. It's in the auto shop area, but it's a classroom space. It's got a partition and separating it, and it's kind of had some storage out there. So we were able to come up with a scheme where we could have exterior access from the northeast of the building and be able to get in and create another opening that would provide an alleyway into this room. So we wanted to, I went ahead and put together a plan, or had FEH Architects put together a design in order to be able to get a scope of work defined and pretty clear. And I invited 3 contractors. I received 2 bids, and wanted to do that work. And basically it's to get that room cleaned up, clear out that partition wall, create some openings and some space for them to have storage, access for deliveries, and also an exterior access. So we're able to accomplish that in that particular room there. So what the plan is to go ahead and get all the pieces and parts delivered and ready, and then we'll go in there and clear the space out, and then knock the work out here as quickly as possible.
Over winter break, maybe?
Excuse me?
Over winter break?
It's close. Not necessarily. I think because of the location of that space and the amount of work, it's not a whole lot of work, but it's some work. We have access through the auto shop garage door and we'll also cut a new access. So any of the loud noise, we'd have to schedule for either after hours on the weekends if we don't make the winter break. So that's kind of my plan B, is if we don't make the winter break, we're kind of on the perimeter of the building so we can complete the work without causing disruption to the adjacent classrooms. Any questions?
Before you leave, do you want to talk, oops, I'm sorry.
How much is it going to cost?
The low bid that I got was $63,730.
And where does that come from?
Excuse
What
me?
fund does that come from?
Pepple.
Okay.
I have a Pepple contingency that we're still fairly strong with, so I could spend or use the money from that account without affecting or sacrificing anything else.
Did you want to talk about the Sawyer ductwork? This has been a long-standing issue. It's kind of been there, and we're really fighting that HVAC noise, but it looks like maybe you have a resolution?
Yes, the heat pumps that we installed with the renovation at Sawyer had created a loud noise in the classroom that was loud enough that it was disrupting their ability to teach and be able to get the kids to focus. So we came up with a scheme after doing several tests and to look at trying to kind of wrap the heat pump enclosure, and kind of narrowed it down that really wasn't the problem, but it was in the ductwork. So what we've done is create a project where we're going to rotate the ductwork and then take it up above the ceiling and then put a couple of drops, 4 drops, ceiling diffusers into the ceiling, disperse it within the room. And so we were working with the contractor to get that work scheduled, and they've got a couple guys that have been working at nights here for the last 2 or 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, I think, is when they started, and the schedule shows that they'll be completed on December 5th. So we'll be able to go ahead and get that one done. And we started out in a couple of the worst classrooms that were getting the highest complaints with the noise distraction, and completed those, and it does make a difference. It's significant difference. So
How many classrooms? How many classrooms were affected by the noise?
29 approximately.
Oh my.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Not quite so fast.
excuse me?
Would you talk about the pool air quality and what you're taking a look at for basic improvement here?
Yes, focusing on several different issues or areas, I guess. One is the air quality, so we're looking at the air handling equipment. Met over the couple times last week and have had some discussions, and we're going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to schedule a mechanical contractor to do monthly inspections on it to be able to make sure all the equipment is running properly. The equipment was put in '98, so it's hitting the 20-year range, which is pretty good for outdoor air handling equipment for a swimming pool facility. So by being able to have them come through, they'll be able to plug their computer in the machine or the equipment and be able to test and check out to make sure everything's functioning correctly. What we're also want to do is to have the factory come out and kind of do a second factory startup, and basically they'll plug in their equipment so they can monitor and read everything, and then they're going to run the equipment through the paces, and if there's anything that's showing some wear or some age, then we'll get some recommendations to be able to take and address that. So by not only bringing that up to snuff and then being able to monitor it on a more regular basis. Typically we do quarterly filter replacement, so that's when we get into the equipment and to do a kind of a visual inspection of it. But I think by doing the monthly, based on the age of the equipment, that'll give us a better chance to keep it up and running, because 20 years old, there's pieces and parts that'll start getting to be the time when they need to be replaced. I'm also researching and trying to gather some information on using a UV filtration system, which is supposed to have a significant positive impact on the chloramines. So what we want to do, the rumor was that the UV is an expensive type of a filtration system. So being sensitive to that, I'm trying to see if we could size something that we might be able to use in the future pool. So that way we don't just lose it after a few years when the pool's demoed. And I think so far that's becoming promising. So I'm still getting information coming back from that. The other thing we discussed was addressing the chemicals as far as the chemical equipment and the systems that we have, and different alternatives if you increase the chlorine levels or decrease the chlorine levels, if you use shock or other things. So working with the city and some of our certified pool operators to be able to understand that better. I don't think there's a whole lot of promise or benefit that we can, or improvements that we'll be able to make with that. But that was one of the things we're doing. And then as far as the other air quality issue is, we're looking to be able to increase the airflow or the drawing of the air out from lower level around the perimeter of the pool. And if we were going to get in a bigger exhaust fan to be able to help draw that air off of the pool deck level. Another thing that we've already implemented is there's ductwork that runs overhead, and the direction of airflow was shooting up. And so we took and we rotated a couple sections, so we're directed that down towards the water. And the idea with that is that chloramines are a heavier type of air, so they accumulate at the surface of the pool, and by directing the air down, we wanted to kind of break up that layer. So I think that's been successful. And another item that we implemented is we put some fans on the deck, again, to be able to get the airflow across the pool. So I think, I'm sorry.
So would that, some of those would be share expenses with the city, or is that something that we would go at alone?
They're all shared. We're 50-50 with
Okay.
the city, and the city's part of the problem-solving process as well as the solution process too.
Would it be possible, since this has been a topic that's gotten quite a bit of attention over the past 6 to 10 months, to have that all together? I know in April you gave us some updated document with what had been done, but to have that available for, since we're getting into the colder time when I would anticipate maybe that impacts ventilation or maybe it doesn't, but when, just so that we could have that available for any of the individuals who are utilizing that facility more.
Sure, I'll go ahead and assemble an update report.
That'd be great.
And then get it to you.
Yeah, just in case we get questions. So,
sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Don't want to steal the thunder actually from Director Briggs or Director Deerdorf relative to our discussion on the high school and where we're headed in that particular direction. That should give them a chance to speak. And part of that is we did agree to a schedule that we included in the minutes and some discussion that we still need to have probably with the rest of the board. But it was pretty much decided that we needed to get moving on a construction management firm and also a phase 2 architect for the project. There is no real danger in starting early, even if a referendum would fail in April for a new high school building. But I'll let Directors Briggs and Deerdorf talk more about that meeting. It was a very productive facilities meeting that we had that day, by the way.
Really, the feedback that would be helpful for the committee is our recommendation would be to bring proposals back for the board to go into interviews with the CM first, and then that way everyone's aware of who we're looking at. Again, Kim will send out an idea of when that might happen. But get a construction manager on board to help us with the architect selection. Again, having the whole board in that interview process, but the committee would probably weed down the proposals to 2 or 3. That way we don't extend the interviews with 6 to 8 people. So being mindful of your time as well. Is that okay with the board, how we're going to do that? Okay. Any questions or concerns with the time frame element of it? Okay. Anything else, Rodney?
Same process for architects.
I think there's a schedule that I tried to hand out to the directors that covers both the construction manager selection, architect, engineer design selection, and the general obligation bond process, so you can see how all 3 of those things are fitting together. One of the other very important discussions that the facilities committee will have, and it will eventually leak its way back to the entire board, is do we include the brand new swimming pool as part of that referendum in April, or do we not? And that's something we'll have to have a good board discussion on.
Any other committee reports? or?
Yes, from Teaching and Learning, we are having a meeting on Thursday, and November 9th, from 3:30 till 5.
Here in the district office.
Here at the district office, yes.
Any other updates from committees? We are kind of getting back to into the business, so we'll be seeing more and more committee reports now that we've got our new board members through all their orientation times. So we will continue to have more of these as we move ahead. Is there any public comments on the committee work?
Do I need to state my name or just make comments? Karen Stone, 2503 Ridgetop Road. And I have two comments. One is for the School Improvement Advisory Committee. I would like to know what the requirements is to be part of this, the SIAC. Who makes the decisions? And as far as diversity, does the group have a diverse minority representation from the African American, Chinese, and Latino community members, to name a few? When will I hear back as far as if I was chosen or who was chosen to be part of the SIAC? My second comment, can the district please announce committee meetings on the website with dates and times a week prior to the committee meetings, and videotape all of our public committee meetings for anyone to view? I was interested in going to the facilities meeting, and I missed that. I'm also interested in some of the other committee meetings that I like to attend, but the times I've been on the website, there's no information. So can we do that a week prior to the meetings and videotape the meetings, since they are public meetings? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on committee work? Seeing none, we will move to consent items. Maybe the public forum first. How's that sound? My apologies. And Angela Shaw, come on up.
Hello, Angela Shaw, 1707 Duff Avenue. And I want to start off my comments just with a few statements. So this is a job description. Someone who develops and implements and monitors programs that promote equity and diversity. Someone who develops and implements strategies to monitor district-wide efforts to eliminate achievement distributions amongst both race and economic groups. Someone who collaborates with the superintendent on diversity and equity practices. Someone who that works with the curriculum and instruction directors to make sure there's equity, unbiases, and reflections in all the coursework. Someone who develops professional development. Someone who assists and coaches when there are equity and cultural differences in the district. Someone who works with HR to make sure that there's a diverse population of faculty and staff. Someone who solicits feedback from parent groups that are traditionally unserved students and parents, and provides suggestions back. I can go on and on. A traditional director of equity has job descriptions of 3 to 4 pages of job duties. Their whole goal is to serve all students in a district, not just looking at ethnicity, not just looking at gender, but looking across all programs, policies, to make sure that there's equity in all things that the district is doing. We need a director of equity for this school district. The reason why I bring this up is we've had 2 incidents in the last month that were mismanaged by this district. We had the kneeling and the whiteboard. The reason why I say they were mismanaged were they did not support parents. I had to find out on Facebook about the whiteboard instance. How am I supposed to support my student who is now feeling, am I safe, am I not safe? As a parent, I want to say what else is being swept under the rug in this district that is not being showcased. I have yet to see a statement from the district. Is there a statement? Also, the response even with the kneeling was late. It was like 6 days after the fact. Why wasn't there a prompt response? If you had a director of equity, you would have had a response out in a day. Why? Because they're used to this. They're used to controlling, they're used to supporting teachers, parents, students in all these. There was no support for the students in all these incidents. They were in their parents' hands and did not have any coping mechanisms. When I visited with one of the football players' parents, they said the coaches didn't even want them to tell the parents about it. Monday was practiced like normal. Nobody talked about the incidents at all after the fact. This is an instance of failure on Ames. This is an example of why students of color feel burdened in this district. You're not responding. You don't have the faculty and staff amongst this group to handle these situations. So it's not a matter of if, it's when the next situation is going to come. And how are you going to deal with it? And so I want to see a director of equity now put in place. I understand you don't have a budget, but you can have somebody part-time come in and help you guys fix up all of this that's happening. You have so many issues with policies that you need someone who is used to this, who has experience to get at these issues, and you need it now. And then, when budget comes around, get a full-time person in here that can be man on the ground, supporting all levels to make sure that all students are treated equally and equitable in the classroom and outside the classroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
Karen Stein at 2503 Ridgetop Road. The purpose for talking with you tonight is very difficult. This has broken me down, and it's really hard to break me down and to bring me down to tears. For the past 2 years, I've been volunteering and working with international families here in Ames. Parents who are in the process of learning English, who may speak a few words of English but do not write in English. I've been assisting them from filling out lunch forms to many other things. Working with different churches, anywhere from St. Cecilia's to UCC, St. Thomas, and so on. And I've come across a repeating issue with a lot of our colored minority families and immigrants, and it has to do with bullying. We've had instances where students have been repeatedly bullied, I would say borderline assaulted, due to their skin color, due to various things, disabilities, learning disabilities, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, just to name a few. If they're not wealthy, if they don't talk like us, it's really concerning. We really need, as a district, to come together and look at our procedures and policies. I know that a lot of the families do not report this incidents because they are afraid. There are instances where not only one child is bullied, but their siblings, their younger siblings, are also bullied. This is a serious issue. And I would like to talk to the board behind closed doors on a very specific, a very serious case. I don't know how to formally request for this, a closed meeting with everyone here. So I'm doing this now, and I'm hoping to receive an email from you as far as directions if we can do this, because this is extreme and it needs attention ASAP. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Now we will move on to consent items.
I move approval of consent.
I second.
Approved by Deerdorf, seconded by Colton.
We've got minutes from the meeting and work session held on October 23rd. The personnel report, there's gifts to the district, which a much smaller number of gifts at this point, but it includes miscellaneous books from Books A Million to Sawyer School and a Con cornet with 2 mouthpieces from Arnold Guard to the Ames High School Band Department. We also have continuous open enrollment applications from 2 students, one in 4th grade and one in 10th.
No questions? Moved by Deerdorf, seconded by Colton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Items from the board.
I just want to say I was invited by Mrs. Franco's class in 4th grade at Fellows to talk about how I became a citizen, and it was lovely, and I'm so glad I got to go. I got to see the littles, and I'm originally from Chile, so they were so interested about my culture. They wanted to know what we ate, so it was very refreshing to know that they care. They want to see what's out there, and they appreciated someone that was different. So I just want to thank Mrs. Franco and the 4th grade class.
I'd like to make a comment. 2 weeks ago, at our last meeting, during this period of time, I made some comments about how I felt the high school administrators, the principal, the band directors, did a very good job, along with cooperating with the students, bringing them together and showing unity. I was quite proud of how that all went down. Actually, I recall the statement coming from the district being fairly prompt and quick. I was pleased with how that worked. But unfortunately, that next day, I was extremely upset that what happened the previous Saturday morning in the locker room, or excuse me, that would have been Friday night, but people in our district knew what had happened Saturday morning, and the folks sitting up here at that meeting that Monday night were not informed. I had to find out about it the same way you did, ma'am, on Facebook the next morning. Now, that alone is unacceptable in my mind, but especially when I have parents, concerned citizens in the community contacting me, asking questions, and I have found out in the same way they did. That is unacceptable. So we will be dealing with that in the future, and I hope that we have support from the community when we do that. More needs to be done regarding what happened with that incident. I know the investigation into that incident is incomplete, and we may never know exactly who did it. But I am concerned that, some things haven't been said to some students in the community, how to approach it. I think strongly, for those of you that watch the news, a similar type of action happened at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and the commandant there made some very eloquent comments of leadership that I've respected greatly, especially as a former member of the military. The one difference there, though, is that he made a quote of, well, if you can't deal with the diversity in our ranks, then get out. Well, unfortunately, we're a public school, and we can't say that to our students because we have a right and a responsibility to educate them. So we need to do what is our job, and that's educate them of the differences and how to deal with diversity in an appropriate manner. So on those 2 notes, I think there's some work yet to be done, and I look forward to moving forward with that.
Items from this.
Yeah, a couple staff items. There was a request relative to property tax rates, and I know the request was who's high, who's low, and what's the state average. I do have a document, if anyone from the board would like a copy of it. It is school district tax rates and levies for the entire state. I can make copies of that if anybody wants it. I can let you know that the highest in the state is 2205, which is in our neighbors to the south at Ballard. The lowest in the state is Okoboji, now at $7.61. Our 1434 is slightly above the state average of 1367. But not, even our 1434 is the lowest in Story County and the lowest in central Iowa. But if there's directors who would like a copy of this, I'll be happy to get it to them. There is a SIAC committee meeting, which is a school advisory committee meeting, which was mentioned by Director Colton just a second ago on November 9th at 6 o'clock, I think, right here in this boardroom. The policy committee is going to hold its first meeting this Friday at 8:30 in conference room B. And the Teaching and Learning Committee has its first meeting this Thursday, November 9th at 3:30 in Conference Room B. For directors, this is a kind of a final reminder. We do have several that are attending the ISB convention November 15 through 17 in Des Moines. If you haven't signed up and wish to attend, just let Kim Frazier know. A couple good notes. The middle school mock trial regionals were held at Marshalltown, I believe it was, this past weekend. And there were, out of that region that we were in, there were 3 slots available for teams to go to the state competition. Ames teams 1, 2, and 3 took all 3 slots, which was, I think, pretty interesting. Thank you to some local attorneys and others that helped our kids with the mock trial thing. I think that was pretty exciting. Also Allstate Music, we had 15 band members, 9 orchestra members, and 3 vocalists who were chosen for Allstate Music, which is also very exciting. And to top that one off, and I was hopeful that we could get the picture that Eric had actually posted, I think, or will post. Our girls swim team, once again, 7 out of 8 captured the state swimming championship in Class 4A. The interesting fact that I told the Rotary Club today about it is there's 12 events at the state meet. We won 7, finished second in 3 others. All kinds of records were set, and Sophie Sorensen just kind of blew everybody away. So congratulations to the girls swim team one more time.
Sure.
I think that's it.
Nothing on the calendar?
Well, our
You
calendar
mentioned
our calendar that's coming up is going to include several items, including a homeless school report, and we were looking at athletic budget amongst other things. We do have some potential grants with the Boys and Girls Club coming up from Anthony, and then we're headed right into Thanksgiving break, which is on November 22 or November 23 and 24. So that's not too far away.
Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Rosser, seconded by Perez. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Adjourn. Thank you.
So I think you told me this already. You're not going to want me to be part of the convention.
Did I?